Welcome to the Emotional Eating Unwrapped podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, an emotional eating and weight loss coach for women looking to fall in love with eating, create healthy attachments with food, and lose weight sustainably. Hello and welcome to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and I'm happy to be here today. And we're going to be talking about the diet hangover, okay, and why every new program feels familiar, right? Like the post-diet hangover that we go through. Because if you're anybody who has experienced the chaos of holiday season, or maybe even like an extended summer vacation where there's just tons of food around, a lot of it's unstructured, lots of leftovers, perhaps lots of just endless eating, and somehow your holiday season stretches into February or your summer vacation stretches into September. And then you wake up one day and you're just like, all right, that's it. I've had enough. I am going to get serious. And so you go online, you order the new diet book, or you sign up for the new diet program that everyone's talking about. You stock your fridge with all the approved foods, right? Maybe even buy a new set of containers because you're convinced that this time you're going to nail the meal prep. And if you've experienced this before, which I know I have 100%, for the first couple of days, you feel unstoppable, right? I remember for myself, I loved the ritual of writing out my plan, the little dopamine rush of crossing off every perfect day on the calendar. It felt like possibility, right? It felt like the answer. It felt like my prayers had been answered and like I was finally in control. But two to 4 weeks later, I found myself exhausted, right? Almost like it came out of nowhere. I was hungry in ways that I couldn't explain. I was thinking about food constantly, planning my next meal before I even finished the one in front of me. And when I finally did slip up, right? Like I slipped, I ate something that was off the plan, or I gave in to some desire around food, it felt like the bottom had completely dropped out, and all the hope that I had, all of the possibility that I felt turned into self-flagellation and guilt and negative self-talk overnight. And this is the cycle that we're talking about today, that post-diet hangover. And I want to unpack it today because if you've lived this, you absolutely know how familiar it feels. Because every shiny new program has a magnetic pull, whether it's keto, intermittent fasting, Whole30, or maybe even it's like the latest cleanse that blew up on TikTok. Regardless of what it is, right? Regardless of what it is, they all have in common this promise, which is a better, more disciplined, more worthy version of you. And when we're feeling stuck in our bodies, in our habits, even in how we see ourselves, of course, we're going to crave that. And the idea of rules, it feels comforting. It gives you a sense of certainty in a world that feels overwhelming, right? Like, let's call a spade in a world that feels overwhelming. And it's not just about food, right? It's about identity. When you say, I'm doing Whole30 or I'm intermittent fasting, there's this rush of pride that comes up. Like, see, I'm disciplined. I'm someone who is like having it together. I'm someone who's doing something and who's like taking action in my life in a positive way. And that anticipation, like the shopping lists, everything you have to get together before it starts, the color-coded schedules, the sense of starting fresh, it mirrors every new beginning that we've ever had. And that's why it feels so seductive, because it's not just about the food. It's the fantasy of finally becoming the person that you think you're supposed to be. But then comes the hangover. Then comes the hangover. And at first it's super subtle, right? Like maybe you're dragging in the afternoons, maybe you're staring at your computer screen and not able to focus. Maybe you notice the food noise and the cravings are louder than they were before. Maybe you find yourself dreaming of bread in a way that feels like almost primal. And then it starts to hit harder, right? You start quote unquote slipping, right? Maybe it's like a late night pantry raid or refrigerator raid, right? Maybe it's just saying yes to pizza or ice cream with friends because you're tired of being the one that says no, right? Like you're just over it. And instead of interpreting those slips as a normal human response, the voice of perfectionism kicks in, because that never really went away. So that voice kicks in. You're failing again. You're never going to get this right. But here's the real truth of this whole thing, is that the crash that you're feeling and that's happening slowly and then more quickly, it isn't a sign that you're weak. It isn't even about you and your willpower and your ability to have control. It's about biology and psychology working together. Because when you restrict food, your nervous system interprets it as scarcity. And your body actually believes that it's under threat. And your brain, which is wired for survival, it's going to push back, and it's going to push you back toward food in ways that feel overpowering, right? It's going to feel like it's overwhelming to you. And so emotional eating, binging, quote unquote, losing control, these aren't failures. They're actually your body's safety mechanisms. But because no one explains it this way, no one tells us this, right? No one really says this in any of the, shiny new diets that we start. We internalize this as shame. We think it means that we're broken. And what happens is that this internalized shame and this feeling of disappointment that we project onto ourselves is what drives us right back into the arms of the next shiny new program. And here's where it gets even a little more interesting, because every new diet ends up feeling like deja vu. And that's because dieting isn't just what's on your plate, it's an emotional cycle. Think about it. The high of starting fresh, like a new relationship, right? Like new relationship energy. And then you have the structure of rules, but then you have the mounting pressure, the eventual slip, the guilt, the self-criticism, and the inevitable reset. And this cycle, right? This loop, this emotional roller coaster, to be honest, your brain remembers it. So even if you swap out keto for paleo or Whole30 for intermittent fasting, you're still playing out, essentially, you're still playing out the same loop in a different costume. And here's the real kicker, is that familiarity feels safe to the nervous system. Even if it's painful, even if it's self-sabotaging, even if you know it never really works, it feels safe to your nervous system somewhat. Even though it feels bad, it feels safe, which happens a lot in relationships that are not really good for us, or that don't really get us to where we want to be or make us feel good, because making us feel good and feeling safe are not always aligned, especially within the nervous system, right? And it feels safe to the nervous system, this type of diet, diet routine and diet cycle because the nervous system already knows the script. That's why starting a new program can feel comforting. It's comforting, like I said, not because it's the right solution, but because it's repeating a story that your brain already knows by heart. Your brain and nervous system already knows by heart, so it gives it some familiarity and some safety. Right? I'll never forget the moment that my new diet felt like the last 3 diets I'd ever been on. Right? It was like waking up in the same movie scene. It was like a Groundhog's Day. And then it hit me that the common denominator wasn't the food plan. It was actually me reliving the same emotional loop. And this is the deeper piece that we don't talk about enough. That dieting becomes part of your identity. Dieting becomes part of your identity. So when you've been swinging between chaos, the emotional overeating, the binging, the control, right? The restriction and the dieting, when you've been swinging between that, chaos and control, being on, being off, being on a plan, being off a plan, your nervous system learns that this cycle is who you are, right? It doesn't think like, oh, you're on a diet. This is the diet. It just becomes who you are. It becomes the way you relate to yourself. It becomes the way you relate to your body, even to your sense of self-worth. And this is the reason why stepping away from diets feels so terrifying. It's not really about the carbs or the calories or the meal plans or the bread or how much should I have, protein should I have. It's about who you believe you'll be without that structure. And so for me, dieting was always my safety blanket. Right? As long as I was on a plan, I felt like I had a shield against judgment. But even if the plan was making me miserable, deep down, it gave me a sense of belonging and it gave me a sense of identity. So when I tried to let it go, especially in those early years, right? It took me a long time to finally create the methodology that I have now. But when I tried to let it go in the beginning, it felt like I was standing completely naked in a world without like any clothes on, right? Like I was standing completely exposed without any protection. So it was no wonder that my nervous system clung to the familiarity of dieting even when it wasn't working. Of course it did. Because even though the dieting, post-diet hangover and that the diet itself cycle made me miserable, the familiarity was subconsciously, unconsciously comforting. So how do you move beyond the post-diet hangover? Because that's what we really want, right? Now that we know what's happening, how do we move past? So first it starts with awareness. Okay, awareness is always the greatest first step. Before jumping into the next program, just pause and ask yourself, what am I really hoping that this will give me? Is it weight loss? Is it control? Is it safety? Is it a sense of belonging and identity, a groundedness, a purpose? And second, practice compassion. Instead of beating yourself up for a late night binge or like overeating or eating past fullness or, any kind of unplanned food experience, just recognize it for what it is, which is your nervous system trying to protect you. Because this shift from judgment to curiosity, it truly starts to change everything. It starts to rewire and repattern the way that your nervous system starts to respond to life. And then third, begin to reconnect with your body's signals. Hunger, fullness, satiety, your emotions. because these are the cues that you've been taught to override with the dieting and the programs, the constantly trying on new programs. And you want to start small. It doesn't have to be this big thing. Start small just to get yourself comfortable with even having this conversation with yourself. Maybe just asking, am I hungry? Or am I looking for comfort right now? And then finally, you want to reframe failure. Instead of seeing it as evidence and proof that you're broken, right? When you're having another post-diet hangover, see it as information, right? Every moment with food, every experience that you have with food is data about what your body and your emotions really need. And over time, viewing it this way rewires the loop. And you move from living on external rules to living in rhythm with your own internal signals. And that is truly where freedom begins. Okay, so here's what I want you to carry out with you. If every new program feels familiar, it's because you're reliving old emotional loops, not because you're failing. And the post-diet hangover, it's not proof that you're broken. It's proof that the system is broken. It's proof that the system is broken. And the way out, it's not through the next shiny new plan. It's through curiosity, awareness, and responding to your body with curiosity and compassion instead of control. Because that's where true freedom and sustainable change actually begins. Okay? So thank you so much for listening today. I appreciate you all so much for taking the time to listen to the podcast. I hope you get so much value out of the podcast. And just a reminder, we are doing a monthly giveaway. So for anybody that loves the podcast, if you rate and review us and take a photo, send that photo of your review to podcast@bewellbyak.com, or you send it to @bewellbyak.com on Instagram. You will be entered in to win a free one-on-one session with me. So I can't wait to meet you. I hope that you join and hopefully you win. And if you are listening to us on YouTube, you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you are listening to us on Apple and Spotify, again, please like us there and follow us there. And that's it for me. Until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.